Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking with me through that break. If you are just tuning in, we just finished talking about the safety market in the upcoming NFL offseason, what it might look like, and the devaluing of the safety position. In the first segment, we went over the Bills absolutely decimating their team with some of the moves they made to get under the cap and what that means for their contention in this season and seasons to come. In this segment, we're going to take a look at the big signings of the day and yesterday. The Bears really improving their defense and some other big moves that have happened around the NFL. But before we get too far into it, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMC Podcast.net. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation. We appreciate anything you do give. Your tip, your message will pop up on the bottom of the screen there. We'll have a little discussion about what you had to say, what your opinions are, and we'll talk about that. Thank you. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. Like I was saying, we are going to talk about the major signings. We're going to talk about the Bears because the big signing of the day was Jaylen Johnson. Jaylen Johnson, the all-pro corner from the Chicago Bears, getting signed to a 4-year, $76 million deal. A huge contract, making him the fourth highest paid corner on the market by average annual value. Jair Alexander is at 21, Denzel Ward is at 20.1, Jalen Ramsey is at 20, and he is at 19 million. There's a couple other big pieces to fall in the corner market as well, but the Bears now, in the last calendar year, have really beefed up their defense. You know, they've made some interesting decisions. They traded Roquan Smith to the Ravens, an incredible linebacker, and they replaced him with Tremaine Edmonds, I apologize. They gave him a massive contract. Then in the offseason, or at the trade deadline, I should say, they went out and they got Montez Sweat, and gave him a huge deal. He has worked out so far. He led the team in sacks, only being there for half a season, and he had more sacks on the Bears than the entire Washington Commanders team did after he left, and before he left as well. And just now, they bring in Jaylen Johnson, who had asked for a trade at the trade deadline. That obviously did not work out, and now he's locked in for 4 years. So you have kind of a big three. It's nice to build a defense this way. You got one guy at each level, a guy that you can look to for the other guys in the locker room for leadership at those positions. Show them, because they're locked in, they're there, they're committed to winning for the long haul. So it's good to have one of those guys in each level of the defense. And Jaylen Johnson is a really, really good corner. Obviously, being an all-pro, you would expect that much out of him. 4 years, $76 million. It doesn't reset the market. It's a good deal for the Bears. That market is only going to continue to go up. But we are looking at an interesting. We just finished talking about the safeties, and it's an interesting dichotomy between the Bills and between the safeties and the cornerbacks. The cornerbacks, obviously, a more flashy position, more obvious what they do there as a whole. But the corner position, probably the hardest one in the NFL. I would say it's maybe the hardest position to play in all of sports. But the Bears have really improved their defense. The Bears need a lot of work, right? That defense was not very good last season. They went out and they got Montez Sweat. They went out and they've locked up Jaylen Johnson. The three big stars of that defense, are locked up now. Now they still need to focus on that defense. But They need to focus less on it, focus more on that offense. They have a lot of holes. They have a lot of holes to fix. But they are working on that right now. Some other, I think it's a great move for the Bears to lock this guy up. Like I was saying before, you get the chance to keep an All-Pro around. You want to keep an All-Pro around, especially with the fact that they are able to kind of reset the clock on having to pay a quarterback this season. That's what this move signals for me. Hello? Can you still hear me? Sorry. My computer crashed for a second. So this move kind of signals to me the fact that they are definitely trading Justin Fields. Not that that's too much of a surprise right now. What this does is it gives them the chance to reset themselves cap-wise. We just talked about how the cap is killing the Bills. They have the ability to go sign out, and they're giving 4-year contracts right now out because that's when they're going to have to decide to pay, assume, Caleb Williams that they pick with the number 1 overall pick there. They're paying him now. You know, you want to get these guys in while you can. You want to build that team up as much as you can to see if you can get some success with Caleb Williams. I think this is a great move by the Bears front office. It shows a lot of progress. They are making a lot of good moves. That team is definitely improving from in the last couple years. Again, it's a team that, regardless of having that number 1 overall pick from the Panthers, they still had the 9th overall pick. So it's not like this is a great team, but making these improvements, getting a new quarterback, probably a new receiver as well to pair with DJ Moore, this team could be a lot better. Now, last year was probably the easiest year in that division. It's not going to be easy for them to win the division. With Jordan Love coming into his own, the Lions becoming good again. Crazy. And whatever the Vikings are doing, they're not a bad team either. That could be a really, really tough division next year. It already is going to be a little tough at the top, but theoretically there's a world where all 4 of those teams are competing for a playoff spot next season. So keep an eye out for that. I don't think it'll happen. I think the Bears still have a lot of work to go, and the Vikings desperately need to figure that quarterback situation out if they want to compete, which we have to see what they do there before I can comfortably say they might go for a playoff spot. But Packers and Lions obviously both made the playoffs last year. That's going to be a tough division for them. But some other moves that happened, there's been a lot of moves on the tight end market. Interestingly, that's been the most active position in free agency so far. It started off just Dalton Schultz signed a 3-year extension, with Houston. Dalton Schultz was really, really important for the Texans last year when he was on the field. When he was on the field, he was a very important safety blanket for C.J. Stroud. He had, I don't have his stats, I think he had like 8 touchdowns on the year. It was a very productive season for him. He seemed to like it a lot in Houston, obviously coming from the Cowboys, where he had a lot of success. It's really important to have a safety blanket like that, be it a running back or a tight end. And Dalton Schultz is a top 10 tight end in the league. They gave him a $36 million contract. He deserves that. So that's a huge contract. There were 2 other big tight end moves yesterday. The Commanders brought in Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz, formerly of the Eagles and the Cardinals. He's coming off a major injury. I like the move a lot, honestly. The Commanders already have a really, really good and underrated, I think, receiving core. Obviously, you have Terry McLaurin, who is arguably a top 10 receiver in the league. I don't think he is but there's an argument to be made there for him. You have Curtis Samuel, who really good out of the slot, uh, and then you have the Jahan Dotson, who can be an effective deep threat if he gets the ball. He's fast, he's long, and you add Zach Ertz to that, a team that had cut Logan Thomas, who in his own right was a pretty solid tight end, who's just a little older and had some injury issues. Never really had the potential to be a top 5 tight end of the league like Zach Ertz has shown he does. Now, Zach Ertz is a little older. He doesn't quite have that same pep in his step as he did when he was winning a Super Bowl with the Eagles, being their top weapon. But he is still a very good tight end when he's healthy. And, with the Cardinals last season, before he got hurt, he was playing really well. I think he had like 5 weeks. He played really well over there. He went and signed with the Lions after they cut him so that he could maybe get a Super Bowl ring. That did not end up happening, obviously. But he goes to the Commanders, and depending on what the Commanders do with a quarterback, they could be a really dangerous team. Their defense needs some work. It's kind of the reverse of last season, actually. Heading into last season, the Commanders were expected to have a really great defense and a really bad offense. I think the defense is shredded. They have no secondary. The defensive line that was so strong heading into last season has lost 2 of its 4 guys, and they're probably going to lose 1 more coming up soon. And the offense, assuming they can get a quarterback, a good one, could be really good. You saw what they did with Sam Howell last season. They were up and down, but they could produce points every once in a while when Sam Howell was having a good day. Those weapons are really solid. They built that offense really well. So the Commanders could have a prolific offense heading into next season. Something to keep an eye on. And the last big tight end move that I saw, the Dolphins signed Jonnu Smith to a 2-year deal. That happened just about an hour ago. He is, again, these tight ends, these are all veteran guys. They're all a little older. But the Dolphins, for as good as their weapons were, Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, they were running with Durham Smythe at tight end. And tight end is, in today's NFL, a very important position. I just mentioned it, that safety blanket, being able to block for that run game. The Dolphins, who rely a lot on that run game, with Achane and Mostert both having incredible seasons last year, bringing in a guy like Jonnu Smith, who's fast for a tight end, still big, can block, and has really good hands, can be a better red zone threat. I think that's a great move for them. I think both of those guys, Zach Ertz and Jonnu Smith, are upgrades with the teams that they went to. And they weren't super expensive contracts either. Tight ends are starting to command more money, but they're not quite at the... they're kind of in the running back range right now. They're starting to pass running backs. So getting these quality tight ends in now are pretty important, especially for a young team that uses a lot of tight ends, because tight ends are so versatile. You can use them in so many different ways. So it's gonna be interesting to see how the rest of this season plays out, how the rest of this offseason plays out. Those were a lot of the big moves that have happened so far in free agency. Again, true free agency opens up 6 days from now. So this is all pre-free agency. Teams are getting ready. They're releasing everyone. They're preparing their moves. A lot of these guys weren't on rosters during the playoffs, so they are allowed to get signed right now, which is why you're seeing some signings happen. But regardless, in our next segment, we are going to transition into the NBA. There's been a really interesting debate, I guess, online discourse talking about the NBA in the 80s and 90s that I've been seeing in the last couple days. I was going to weigh in on that, talk a little bit about that phenomenon. But yeah, stick around for that. Thank you for tuning in on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We will be right back.